Welcome to Tattooed Freaks in Business Suits, recorded live in the kitchen of the Personal Touch Career Services in Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Donna Shannon. As a professional career coach, I help people navigate the hiring maze to get the jobs they really love. In addition to working with job seekers one-on-one, I do have a book available. You can find How to Get a Job Without Going Crazy on Amazon and, of course, our website. Today, my guest is Teri, who is going to talk to us about all the self-limiting beliefs and other lies that we tell ourselves.
Absolutely. Hello. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. So for those who don't know, our show's purpose is to explore and redefine the world of work, especially as Gen X, millennials, and then those to come after seek positions of leadership that still allow them to be themselves. So every show we explore a topic related to business or job searching. And of course, we're going to talk about tattoos. Our sponsor is the Personal Touch Career Services, Denver's top-rated career coaching service. We focus on the practical tools for your job search, including resumes, LinkedIn profiles, job search coaching, and ongoing classes. So check out our ridiculously long website, personaltouchcareerservices.com. Once again, that's personaltouchcareerservices.com, or, you can just Google it. So hi, Teri, how are you today?
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So I actually met you recently at this organization here in Denver called the Dames, and which is a gathering for women who are leading 6-figure and 7-figure businesses. So that's always really cool. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about yourself and your company and what you do?
So I originally started as a therapist. So it's a bit of a long story, but I really got on this path really early in high school, actually. I was a peer counselor in my sophomore year in high school, and I was in charge of the 5th and 6th grade. So I'd pop over there and I would, get to know them. And at one point during my high school years, I had a 6th grader come to me and tell me that her 5th grader friend had a plan and was going to commit suicide that weekend.
Wow.
And so we intervened and got her the treatment that she needed. And I felt like that moment changed everything for me. And I was just like, hey, this is what I want to do when I grow up, right? And so I then went into the counseling field and graduated with a master's degree, opened up a large counseling center here in the Denver, Colorado area. It's called Creative Counseling Center. And, we currently have 10 employees. And so, we are serving hundreds of families and kids and adults every single month. And it's been very rewarding and exciting. And I thought that was going to be my end all be all, but I realized that was part of my path and part of my journey. And so now because it's running itself at this point, that has really given me the freedom to pursue some other passions and interests for me. And I truly feel like my calling has been this next level, which is the new company called Talking with Teri. And so that company now works. So I've taken my 20 years of counseling experience, I've combined it with energy psychology, and then applied the principles of quantum physics. Now, quantum physics, there's lots of universal laws that go under that arena, if you will. Most of the people, when I talk about this, are familiar with one of those laws called law of attraction. So I utilize that law amongst all these other sorts of energy laws of the universe and principles that govern energy, and utilize those tools to help expand people's businesses with a lot more ease. So it's been absolutely fabulous. And I feel like now that I've taken this little bit of a pivot, but now this just really feeds my soul as far as working with women entrepreneurs primarily, and helping them leverage their business in a different way.
And you have a book out there too, right?
I do. It's called Be the Magic of You, Tools to Transform Your Life. And so with a foreword written by Jack Canfield himself. And so we launched that I think we're almost going on 3 years now. And that has lots of different tools in there. And if folks are interested in hearing more about that book or getting their own copy, you can always go to talkingwithteri.com and look at the products. I have our daily intentions planner along with the book as well.
All right. So one thing we are hearing a lot more about in kind of kicking around, especially in the coaching arenas, we hear this and we're getting familiar with it, is that whole phrase of self-limiting beliefs. So what are self-limiting beliefs and what are some like classic examples of this?
Yeah. So how I define, these belief systems, very early on, in the first 3 to 5 years is the most crucial part of our development. We learn very early on in those first 3 to 5 years how the world is. Okay, and we're learning that from an unconscious standpoint, right? Those little kids are soaking up in experiencing life in all areas, and we have these billions and billions of trillions of cells in our body that's giving us information and taking in information. So we're learning a ton at that time, and we learn during that time whether or not the environment that we're brought up in is safe or not. And so we start creating those belief systems as early as that point in time. And those belief systems then get reinforced throughout our lives. And so many of us are walking around with limiting beliefs and we don't even are aware of it. Some of us are addicted to self-sabotage, and most of us, recognize that something isn't working. Otherwise, we'd have everything that we dreamt of. And so I really help utilize some outside the box tools to clear out those limiting beliefs and self-sabotage, and then give people the tools to help continuing to generate more in their lives utilizing the laws of the universe. Yeah. So those belief systems, if you will, they all can get boiled down to, I'm not blank enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. So I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not competent enough. I'm not wealthy enough. I'm not loved enough. I'm not something enough. So what happens though over time is we have all these negative thoughts, right? These negative thoughts reinforce those beliefs, or we have negative thoughts that are coming in and they're creating new belief systems over time. Mm-hmm. And so we know that we look at I'll give the example of the iceberg theory. So the iceberg theory states that 10% of, the iceberg is what we can see above water. 90% of the iceberg is what is below the surface that we're not able to see. So if we compare that to our brain, 10% is conscious thought. So whatever thought you're thinking right this second is conscious thought. 90% of our thoughts are unconscious or subconscious. So that's like the NASDAQ ticker. Like it never shuts off. It just continuously goes, right? Mm-hmm. And these thoughts that, 90% of are made up of conscious or unconscious, subconscious or unconscious, those are 90% of that is negative thoughts. So that is like constantly going 24/7. And that's contributing to all of those belief systems that we've had in place, or we're continuing to reinforce them, or we're creating new ones based on our experiences and that continuous script, if you will, that's going over and over in our head. Right. And so our job, I believe, is we get to shut those off. And how do we shut those off is I teach some tools to help us shut those off. And I'm happy to share some of those with your listeners today.
Sure. So it's kind of like one thing that I think of me and my sister as a classic example of this, because we are like literally the exact opposites, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever heard that old curse that there's two great curses in the world. One is you will always get what you want, and the other is you will never get what you want in the world.
Right.
Yeah. So my sister's convinced that she's the downside. She's convinced that she never gets what she wants in the world. And I tend to be on the other side. I always get what I want. So I have to be careful about what I manifest out there. Cause like one time I really wanted to get a puppy badly, but we were saying, well, we have to wait for the cat to pass away. Cause he was a 20-year-old cat.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I'm like really focusing. It's like, going, I want a puppy. And then my cat ran away.
Oh dear.
Oh no, that's not what I meant to happen.
Yeah. Well, and I truly believe that we are very powerful and potent beings when we're in alignment. And when
Hmm.
we're not in alignment, so when we're manifesting and creating and generating, right? And things are falling into place really easily, that tells me that we're in alignment. But most people are addicted to the struggle, and
Hmm.
it's difficult. And so they don't see the results because they're like, well, I'm still sitting here trying to put the square peg in this round hole, and I'm forcing it to happen, and I'm making it happen. And then when I finally get it to happen, it's not the results that I'd like to happen.
Hmm.
And so we're not in alignment with energy. And so if we can clear out some of those blocks that are holding people back, it's amazing how quickly we can go back into that alignment where it does become easier to manifest and create. A
Hmm.
lot of people will watch the movie The Secret, and they'll be like, well, it's not happening for me. I'm saying my 3 affirmations. I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. And I'm like, there's so many problems with this, right?
Right.
First of all, affirmations are probably not going to get you what you would like to have. Second of all, you're saying the word want, which is a lacking word. So there's all these like different pieces, and you're saying it 3 times versus where the unconscious, we have anywhere from 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day, and only 2,000 of those are conscious thoughts. So we're in this place where we're not going to see the results that we would like to have because all that subconscious
Hmm.
is working against us, and it's working against us at a far greater capacity than what we are consciously, you know, connecting with it back at.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer of like doing the work. So as a
Yeah,
coach, I really focus on those practical tools. I like to tell people I don't want to talk about your feelings. I want to tell you what to do.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I know,
Love
right?
it.
But I like
Let's get it
firmly
done.
believe
I
putting
get it.
intention into the work you're putting out there. It's
Yes.
like, for example, applying for a job and saying, I really want this job. It's like, okay, number one, you still have to apply to HR to say
Yeah.
that but while you're doing it, throw your intention into it. Do the very best job you can filling out that application with the mental thought that goes along with it. Then you do above and beyond. We're going to track down hiring managers. And at some level, you have to believe that hiring managers do in fact want to hear from you, which is totally true. But we get so held back on that because you read in the job ad, it says no phone calls, please. And then you're like, oh, the receptionist shut me down. So of course they don't want to talk to me. And like, that's not even the truth.
Yes. Well, and you're absolutely right with that piece. Is like, I think sometimes we're trained to see it before we
Mm-hmm.
believe it.
Yeah.
And that's not how universal law works. We have to believe it with all of our heart and all of our might before we see it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so when we start to say, okay, I just know. And a lot of times when we tap back into our own knowing, right, whether it's job searching or building a career or building your own business, when we tap into that knowing, and oftentimes I'll just have people just quiet themselves, close their eyes, and just ask, what is it that I know that if
Mm-hmm.
I pretended what is it that I know that if I, hold on, let me ask the question. What is it that I know that I've been pretending not to know
Mm-hmm.
that would make all the difference? And when we start to get clear at what that is, it's almost immediate when people have an awareness of like, oh yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and this is what, and so we know it. We're tapped into it, but we just kind of forget about it. And so having that clarity is key. But the true work is believing it before we're able to see the results.
Yeah. And then there's also fear that goes along with that too.
Oh my gosh,
I
yes,
mean, and
all the time.
yeah, and it's understanding that just because you're scared of something doesn't mean you have to let the fear consume you and paralyze you. I have to do this one for myself all the time.
Oh, me too. And you know, I talk a lot about getting outside your comfort zone. And, I don't expect people to go and jump out of a plane tomorrow.
Mhm.
But if we do some little things, Eleanor Roosevelt says, her quote is the famous quote, do something that scares you every day. And it doesn't mean it has to be terrifying, but doing something that pushes that boundary, that stretches you just a little bit more today, and just stretches it and continue each day or each week, we get to stretch ourselves. And the more we stretch ourselves, we start to create a bigger comfort zone, if you will. And then we
Mhm.
learn that piece, and then we stretch again, and then we learn that piece, and then we stretch again, and we learn that piece. And pretty soon, if we choose to jump out of a plane, we can. And it's been fun. Like over the years, I've told my family that I said this years and years ago, and then it's kind of become like this unspoken like truth in my family, that if anyone who stays at our house, either they're vacationing and they're staying in our house or just stopping by or whatever, if they're staying at a house, my rule is they have to do one thing outside their comfort zone. And I don't tell them what that is. They get to make that up, right? And so when my mom first started coming out, getting outside of her comfort zone was drinking a glass of wine. Okay. And then over the years, it's expanded and grown to where we went eating all these exotic foods. And then we went and did whitewater rafting. And then we started doing zip lining. And then about 3 years ago, she jumped out of a plane with me.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
now what's been brilliant is that she continues to get out of that comfort zone because she has so much evidence that said that she was okay.
Right.
Right? And it's about expanding that evidence. Now, if you're not an adventurista, that's okay, but start small. And whatever that is. And so I had my nieces and nephews stay out last year with me. And it was funny because they had taken 6 months to research and plan what they were going to do when they got out to Colorado. And I was like, how cool is that? That I'm seeding some possibilities for them to expand their horizons, to expand their experiences. And that's what I think, the greatest remedy to fear, I believe, is action. And so if we just take small, little, intentional action steps, it starts to give us that permission. It's like, okay, because my big leaps that I took, 5, 10 years ago were absolutely terrifying. And I've taken bigger leaps than that in the last 2 or 3 years. And it seems like, oh, I got this. Like, right? I got this. This totally doesn't bother me anymore.
Right.
And so we have that evidence, and that brain now is engaged to find the evidence. There's a part in the brain called the reticular activation system, and it's always finding evidence to support whatever we're giving information on. And so that then allows us to find more evidence that gives us permission and validation, if really, about taking those next steps in our lives, whether that's personal life or business life or whatever it might be.
Right. I think one thing that is very interesting, I heard about it a lot several years ago and then kind of didn't hear so much about it, but now it's kind of having a resurgent, is the whole imposter syndrome.
Oh,
And for those of you who don't know what imposter syndrome is like, for example, you just got promoted into a new role, but you're not exactly fully comfortable within it. So you feel like a fake. And there's this constant fear of like, oh my gosh, they're going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing and I'm going to be exposed as a fraud. And, all these, really, that's like the ultimate in a self-limiting belief, I think.
yeah. Well, and we've expanded, and I work with a lot of multi-million-dollar companies, and it's interesting that some of these women that are at these high-powered positions, it's almost like the company grew too fast and they weren't able to like grow with it, and all of a sudden it's like it feels like an overnight sensation, but really it was a year or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or whatever it might be. But they're like, oh, I'm here, and now, oh my goodness, like I don't have the self-belief in myself or the self-worth or the confidence in myself to really see myself at this different level.
Mm-hmm.
And so that imposter syndrome will show up, and it's, yes, like exactly what you said. I feel like a fraud. I feel like a fake. They're going to find out about me. Like, what's going to happen? Well, then we start living in fear, and
Mm-hmm.
it can get detected, right? And then we lose that confidence, or we've never had that confidence in that position. And so some of the work that I do is help people get themselves really confident in that new position, and whatever stories that they had holding them back. And a lot of times it comes around, their own upbringing. Maybe they're the highest earner in their family now, and that comes with pressure, or whatever their money story was that they were growing up with, or their money beliefs, all have an impact on that new role and what and the expectations and the responsibilities, and all of the stories that have come with them. to this new light, and now they're at this higher position. It's like, oh gosh, I gotta address this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
gotta feel comfortable and confident in this new role. And there's been so many different celebrities that we know of that have publicly come out and said that they feel like a fraud. Denzel Washington, uh, Tina Fey, Maya Angelou. I mean, some of these amazing people that we would have never imagined have publicly said, yeah, I never wanted to be, I never wanted to have anyone, see me, my true colors really, because I wasn't this great, so.
Right. And that's the other thing to understand, that because this is one of the traps of the imposter syndrome, is you're convinced that nobody has ever felt this way before. And if
Yeah,
you admit it to anyone, it's even
it's
that much
devastation.
worse.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, yes, absolutely. And so, yeah, you have to have that community where
Mhm.
you can be very transparent and know that you're being supported and loved in a community that allows you to be like, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, and this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's a silent business killer. It really is, because from a vibrational energetic perspective, you're putting out like almost two facets, right? You're putting out this facade of this, like, I got this put together, I feel confident and great, but then energetically inside you're like, oh my gosh, like, right, like you have all these limiting beliefs, like, and people feel that and sense that when they come in when they interact with you.
Hmm.
So
So
if you
you
don't
talked
have
a
that
little
massive,
bit, yeah, you talked a little bit about money. So let's kind of dive into that, because I think that's one of the big self-limiting beliefs that we can just kill ourselves with. And I think it kind of taints their potential. So for example, even in my own story, if you told me I was going to have a six-figure business, I would be like, oh no, that's impossible. I can't even imagine that. And
yeah,
this year we're going to be closing in on a figure that 2 years ago was impossible. And it's like looking at what, our daily sales had to be this. And I'm like, I don't even understand how that's possible at all. And
yeah,
then now it's like, oh, that's just Tuesday. That's just a regular Tuesday. It's no big deal.
exactly.
So
Yeah, and how much better can it get? I love it.
yeah. And it's like literally 2 years ago, I was so stressed out about cash flow and things like this. And I would sit there in my office multiple times a day thinking to myself, I am terrified. I am terrified we're not going to pay our bills this month. And I am terrified this is going to happen. And then this went on for like a month. I'm like going, wait a minute. Of course it's going to happen. I'm doing all this projection that all these negative things are going to happen. And every time I say I'm terrified, not scared, terrified that it's going to happen, just makes it manifest all that much more.
Yeah, the two most powerful words is I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever you lead that with, right? I am and terrified, right? You think about the word terrified, and from an energetic perspective, our emotions are on a scale from, zero down below is very negative, fear, doubt, worry, very low vibrational emotions. And then you go up that scale, right? Worry is kind of somewhere in the middle, you know, and as you climbing up, you have contentment and happiness, and then you keep going up further, and you have gratitude and joy and love, right? Gratitude and love are considered the two highest vibrational standpoints or emotional standpoints that we can be in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you think about just vibrationally, you're saying, gosh, I am terrified, and you're this down at the very bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening then from a vibrational standpoint is you're attracting and generating from that same vibrational standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, something shifted for you, I'm guessing,
Yeah.
because you had to get out of that place to create more, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so,
And there's like this spiritual organization that I'm a part of. And it's like one of the promises you get from working the program is that fear of economic insecurity will leave us. And
yes,
it was breaking it down. It's like, wait a minute. It's not economic insecurity is going to leave us. It's the fear of the economic insecurity is going to leave us. Then by accepting that sometimes economic insecurity is a fact, now I can deal with it as a fact and not as a thing that's keeping me trapped.
yes, exactly, exactly. And like you said, then I can start looking at my business of like, okay, let's start taking action and doing the things that's going to be money generating activities that's going to contribute to the growth of my business, instead of getting trapped in that fear and then doing nothing. Because a lot of times people will get trapped in that fear and just don't know what to do. And then they stop. And so when you stop the energy, right? You stop that flow of creation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's very powerful. And now look at this. It's just Tuesday. You're like, oh, it's just Tuesday, because that's what we do on Tuesdays, and that's what we do on Thursdays, and that's what we do on Fridays. Like, of course, this is the amount of money that's being generated in this business. And you're now having all this evidence, the support.
Exactly.
And that's like, I got this, right?
Yeah. So how do you work with people in overcoming like their money perceptions?
So first of all, we look at what are the money stories and scripts that are playing out. That's different for everyone, but typically there's some over, I'm not on video. We're on video right now, but your audience is not on video. I was going to show something. I was going to sketch something. I love drawing pictures for folks to see it. But that fear of money, I would consider that a global statement, okay? And then we'd start looking at what are some of the other fears that make up that time. And so I draw like a little forest out, and I say, okay, here's my little forest of all these little trees. All these trees represent different thoughts, different beliefs, different things that you were told, different traumas around money, because money is one of those high intense conversations for a lot of folks. Or if it's not, then it's the opposite, which is we don't talk about money. We don't discuss money. It's a secret. I remember growing up, I never knew how much my parents made. I never knew what saving was. Like you didn't talk about it, right? So you can have, and then it's like a continuum, right? Those are the two extremes, and then we have everything in between. So really, it's identifying what that story is and what that blueprint, if you will, that was made up for that individual. And then we can go back, and then I utilize various energy tools and techniques and modalities to like just clear those out. And I don't need to have the backstory. I don't need to have like why that was, or just like, okay, here it is. What did that bring up for you? What was the message? And let's clear it out, right? And then now we've cleared those things out. What are some tools that they can do to continue generating, money in their lives? And so one of those tools I can share with your listeners, a lot of times we have this perception of things that are, I'll say the word perception is the key word here. Things are bad or good or wrong or right, that perception of it. And so instead of, if we perceive something as negative, right, it's down below, it's vibrating in a lower vibration. The question that we can ask is, how much better can it get? Because it can always get better, right?
Right.
And if something's vibrating in a higher capacity, right, like money is flowing in, because we always want to reinforce that. And if it's a high vibration, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that it's a Tuesday and we're making this much money. How much better can it get? Because it can always get better even then, right? And so those are some of the fun tools that I'll teach people, that when they receive money, for example, so once we've cleared out those blocks, then we can be in an alignment with and receiving more. Another one is like, thank you, I'll take more of that, right? And so we start to tell the universe, if you will, that I'll take more of this, and we can start creating and generating from that place, and shifting that belief from scarcity. And it really is a paradigm shift from scarcity to abundance. That does not happen overnight for people, because there's scripts, and I came from that place of scarcity because I just didn't know any better, and that scarcity place comes from a sense of lack, but also there's a heavy energy around that, and you're always trying to effort to create more, and it's never in a place of ease, I will say. And so that is a paradigm shift from that scarcity mindset into abundance. And then once we start to shift that paradigm, we can shift that evidence, and then people start to find that evidence, and really it really is just this is a tweak, we're a
Mhm.
shift of creating that and creating more in our lives. And then once people start seeing that, like, the evidence just comes pretty effortless.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying about seeing the evidence of positive growth.
Yes.
Like one of the things I read this past week was an article that only 85% of women entrepreneurs never get their business to a six-figure level. And I'm like, really? It's like, wow, that just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
And it's like, even when I first found out about the Dames, which was very early in 2019, and the qualifiers for making it in there was having a six-figure business. And I'm like, well, I don't have a six-figure salary. And it's like, it
Yeah.
took me 6 months to figure out that definition was revenue into the business.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had like blown the lid off of that first tier of requirement anyways.
Yes.
But that kind of thing, it's like, let's change how we're defining the terms. And then you can see the success inherent with what it is. And
Yeah.
sometimes you need those benchmarks in the rest of the world to understand, no, you're crushing this.
And I would agree. I see a lot of entrepreneurs. I think I think our colleges have done a huge disservice
Mm,
because we have believed that if you go into, and I have a good friend at Metro State University that he is changing that for here locally, because what they have found at universities is if you go into and getting your math or your bachelor's or master's degree in business administration or business, that is where you get your business classes from. Okay.
mm-hmm.
But then you have to go figure out like what it is that you're going to sell, produce, whatever, if you're an entrepreneur or go into a business, right?
Right.
A corporation. But most entrepreneurs, and I can't remember the percentage, he would know. I would say majority of entrepreneurs come from their skill-based industry.
Mm-hmm.
Then they said, you know what? I don't want to continue doing the skill in whatever industry that might be in. And then they want to go into entrepreneurship and own a business. And they have no flipping business experience, right? And so whenever I tell people nowadays, this my thing is when I tell graduating high schoolers that are graduating college or graduating high school and going into college, I say, please, 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 if you do nothing else, all your electives should be business, period. Whether you use it or not, it's an elective, no harm, no foul, but because you never know what that's going to do. And so this particular person here locally, he's incorporating entrepreneurship, business management in every single skill.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a musician, there's going to be business management integrated into every class.
Yeah.
If you're a cosmetologist, if you're a veterinarian, if you're a physician, like it doesn't matter what industry, but it's so profound. So I think that's a big part of this is that we don't know until we get there. We're like, oh, I want to become a business owner. And then like, oh, well, we didn't really have a manual
Yeah.
to get us there. And so
What's a business plan?
what's a business plan and what is this whole thing called revenue and, profit and, and so, yeah, I think that's a piece of it. And then our mindset around that, if we're not in a really great place, we will be consumed with that fear, doubt, and fear, doubt, and worry and insecurity because we don't know, right? We automatically go into the unknown, which is fear. It's fear induced anyways, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to learn stuff, but then try to and we wonder why businesses fail. 50% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. I can tell you why.
Right.
I see
Right.
it. And like having the systems in place, like systems is so key. Well, but if you haven't been taught that or learned that somewhere on your journey, most businesses will not create or build out those systems. That is the foundation, I believe, in a business to scale it.
Yeah.
So I do feel like, yeah, you're right. I would say, you said 85% does not make it past that six-figure income.
Right.
Is that what you said? Yeah, I think that's what you said. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So another thing that I think is real important, and we're starting to get short on time. So, but this is a fascinating conversation. I
I know,
love
we could
talking
talk
about this
forever.
stuff. So I think one of the important things to note too is you can build the work and the life that you want. And part of that is giving yourself permission to change your goals like you did.
Yeah, like I feel like mine was a pivot, and it's been a bit interesting. I truly believe that I was meant to make the counseling center, and we've impacted thousands and thousands of lives over the last 15, 20 years. And like I said, I thought that was my end all be all, but I realize now that that was my passion project. That was my stepping it was a stepping stone, for what has positioned me into this new world, that I can have a greater impact in the world. I truly feel called to have a greater impact in the world, and impacting more people's lives in a bigger way. And so I do feel like I've been very guided, if you will, into this process. And yeah, it was a bit of a pivot for me. But here's what I would say to the business owners that are listening to this. I would not have done it had the first business been not running on its own. And that's key.
Mm-hmm.
Because I find so often, I was at just at an event a few weeks ago. I'm not kidding you. This lady had more side hustles than I've ever seen. I think she had 6. And I'm like, how do you do 6 side hustles effectively? You don't. Because unless they're running themselves, what happens is, and I see this a lot with entrepreneurs, is they'll get into one business and it's not making past that 6 figures. So then it's like, well, it's not being effective. I'm only making 20,000 or 30,000. So I better do something else to supplement. So then they become a doTERRA rep, or some sort of a rep. And then they're like, well, that's not making money enough. So then they will, and I've had people 2 or 3 or 4 like side hustles, and none of them are being super effective or efficient.
Right.
So create one, spend that time generating and creating that, being successful. Then if you're going to offshoot or pivot, do so when that is becoming a passive income, right? Or shut it down all the way. Because what happens energetically is now you're invested here 50% of the time and here 50% of the time. And typically they're not the same audience.
Yeah.
Even if there's some overlap, you're still having to market new people, speak to new people, connect with new people, new referral sources, new partnerships. And it's literally having 2 businesses in it. And I kind of like, it's just too overwhelming. And so people are not able to do it effectively or efficiently and make it profitable. So I know I'm going to tick off some people by saying that, but I'm like, just focus on one, get it in good standing, and then launch another one.
Yeah, I think
if you're a true entrepreneur.
I think that's really important. And a lot of the people I work with are in the entertainment industry. And, my own background was I was in broadcasting for like 8 years. So I started, I did the weird pivot because my goal is I always wanted to be a wacky morning DJ.
I love it. A wacky morning DJ.
Yeah. So I got a job in a radio station, and actually in the business office where I worked for 3 years. But then I was able to do that crazy pivot when a job for a morning show producer came on, and I made that change. But you know what? I did it for almost a year. And then when I got out of that, I did like a big life change. It was a whole deal. I talk about it in my speaking. But then it's like I needed to break it down. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be a morning show producer again. That's just waking up way too early. And really broke it down into, these are the things that I loved about my career so far. And that's where I'm like, you know what? I really love being in HR. I love doing the accounting. I love being in the broadcast environment. And I took the time to find a job in broadcasting at the PBS station here in town, TV. And I was in the business office again, where I stayed for another 5 years, which gave the springboard into writing my book and teaching classes on job searching. So if you look at each piece, it's kind of weird. If you look at the total, the story makes sense. Yeah. And I think giving yourself the permission to live an amazing life with an amazing life story, it's a matter of giving permission.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. When and yes, giving yourself permission is powerful. A lot of times I'll give clients I'm like, you have my permission to go rock the world. And they're like, oh, okay. Like sometimes the power of just giving someone the permission is all that they need, right? Like be unapologetic, go do what you love to do and create money doing it. Create a lifestyle for yourself. It's powerful.
Yeah. Now I'm doing stand-up comedy because my coach my speaking coach, he found out that my second childhood dream was to do stand-up comedy. And he's all like, oh, you should do that. And I'm all like, no. And then it built on me for 3 months. And I'm like, I could do that. Yes.
I'm so excited about that because I was just talking to the same person, and I was telling him too. And so I'm gonna come and do a stand-up comedy skit too. So maybe we can do it together.
Awesome. I'm down for that.
It's one of those. It was something that's come up for me too. Is like in the last year, it's like, maybe I can do this. And so I've been stockpiling all my funnies in a notebook. So I'm super excited to see what that takes me. It's not a side thing. I don't want to, it's just something that I want to, some people go bowling and some people go watch a movie. I want to go do stand-up comedy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll be happy to share any of the tips I know about the Denver comedy scene.
Yeah.
All right. So it's time for one of my favorite parts of the show where we get to talk about the tattoo of the day. And you do, in fact, Teri, have a tattoo. What have you got? Where is it? What does it mean?
You know what? It's so fun. What did you just say? What his name is?
No, I said, what does it mean?
Oh, what does it mean?
It might have a name.
I'm like, oh my gosh, do people name their tattoos? You know what's so funny is that I was 18 and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do my rebellious, get a tattoo. And I went to this tattoo parlor shop. So funny. I was in Manhattan, Kansas. And there's, of course, I'm looking for a butterfly. And for some reason, for somewhere at that time, butterflies meant transformation for me. And it meant, just for me over the years, I've given it probably more meaning than when I had when I was 18. But as everyone knows, that caterpillars go through this amazing, they go through their journey. I guess they get blessed with having two lives, right? And then they go through this powerful transformation. And they just become this amazing, beautiful, and sometimes that caterpillars, let's be honest, are not pretty when they start. And then they turn into and transform into this beautiful butterfly, right? And so that really resonated with me. And so I had this little tiny, and it's so tiny, and it's this big. I mean, literally, it's maybe a quarter of an inch. It literally took the guy 15 minutes to do, and I was the most painful 15 minutes I've ever sat through. Over childbirth, I believe. And so, but it was really funny. I was picking out I couldn't find the one wasn't resonating with any of the ones that were on their butterfly pages, right? And I went over and there was this big back tattoo that literally, I don't know, is probably 3 feet by, a 1.5 foot wide tattoo, I guess canvas, what you call it. And I was there was a little tiny butterfly on the thing. I was like, I'll take that one. He's like, you mean this whole? I'm like, no, the little tiny butterfly. It was really funny, but no, I had my one, and I feel complete having one and done. So I regret having it I have it on my ankle. It seemed like a very smart thing at 18. I wish I would have put it in somewhere else, another location.
Yeah. On your face? No.
On my face. On my forehead.
Yeah, there you go.
No, somewhere I don't know, I always joke that we cover up tattoos at our office because we never knew who's walking in the door, and we want to be really sensitive to that. And so we are trained to be non-judgmental of others, but that doesn't mean that other people are judgmental or non-judgmental of us, right? And so we have a firm, just we want to keep it professional, and so we cover it up. And so I always joke that my boss is really mean and makes me cover it up, and so my boss is me, but
yeah.
But I would have placed it in a less conspicuous place. So
great. So Teri, why don't you tell us how people can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. The best and fastest way is checking out our website at talkingwithteri.com.
And that's spelled Teri for those listening.
Yes, talkingwithteri.com. There they're going to find how to follow us on social media. I'm on Facebook Live every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We have an upcoming event that's Unlock Live. We've sold out our last event, and now we're looking to sell out this event. It's February 8th, 2020. It's an all-day live event, so all that information will be on the website at talkingwithteri.com. And yes, I am happy to connect with people. I always offer a free 30-minute conversation for women entrepreneurs that are really what I call my creative visionaries, that are ready and willing and truly invested in leveling their business up, to take their 6-figure business to that 7-figure business, and doing it with a lot of ease, joy, and grace.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Teri. My producer always reminds me, if you like what you're hearing today, give us a like, give us a follow. If you really liked it, give us a comment. If you don't, keep it to yourself. Don't be mean.
Exactly.
And I know, right? And then, yeah, don't put out negative energy, basically. That's right. All right. Well, thank you again, Teri, and you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.